an apology for ignoring that sexual harassment of a staffer just moments before the president's big speech. And we'll talk to the parents of a teenager slain by MS-13 gang members the night after the president offered his family, their family condolences. But first, the Democrats' rage against Trump's optimism machine. That's the focus of tonight's Angle. Last night, in his first State of the Union address, the president delivered what was perhaps the most robust defense of American exceptionalism since Reagan.
The state of our union is strong. This, in fact, is our new American moment. You can dream anything. You can be anything. And together, we can achieve absolutely anything.
Wow. Now, my question is, when we have this precious gift, liberty, that men and women fought and died for over the centuries, think about our flag, our country. Why wouldn't everyone believe that it's all worth protecting and preserving? That our traditions and the American people are worth protecting?
My duty and the sacred duty of every elected official in this chamber is to defend Americans, to protect their safety, their families, their communities, and their right to the American dream. Because
now that last line sent the Never Trump media right over the edge.
You saw a divisive speech, the wedge issue of immigration, the scare tactics of MS-13. It was a speech delivered almost from an alternate reality.
You tell me
what about the
that room is supposed to respond like this to the great dictator?
I think the frame that they felt in the room was one that inflames the cultural divides.
Only over at that other cable network would defending Americans and America be controversial. Now, call me crazy, but I think most Americans love it when their president stands up for them, is a cheerleader for them. Trump looked past the desperate detractors and toward true American heroes. The officer who adopted the child of a woman on drugs. Families who suffered the death of children at the hands of MS-13. And by the way, we're going to hear from one of those families later on in the show. And that brave North Korean defector who escaped to help others do the same. The president celebrated our anthem, the military, families, and faith. And, of course, the creation of 2 million new jobs, employee bonuses, not crumbs, business investment, optimism, all good stuff. Trump is making things demonstratively better, and the Democrats are seething because of that. When they can't even bear to acknowledge the good, when they can't even feign the appearance of being happy at good news for American workers and American business, something is really wrong. It's gone totally off the rails. The Democrats, I think, have allowed their personal hatred of Trump, the man, to blind them to all the good that's happening around them. Now, look at this CBS Snap poll taken right after the president's big speech last night. 8 in 10 Americans who watched the State of the Union felt that the president was trying to unite the country. 2/3 said the speech made them feel proud. And 1/3 said it made them feel safer. But check out the Democrat reaction today.
The president's speech was a disappointment and a missed opportunity.
What I consider to be the lowest point in the president's speech last night was when he says Americans dream too.
It was dangerous what he said last night. What he is doing brings tears to the eyes of the Statue of Liberty.
Well, I don't know if Nancy should talk about tears and the Statue of Liberty, because that's a statue. The reality here is that by reflexively attacking Trump while providing no actual policy alternatives, Democrats undercut and undermine the public good. They call themselves progressives, but when there is actual progress, they recoil. Now, the left isn't afraid that Trump is going to fail. No way. They're afraid that he will succeed, and they're afraid that he is succeeding right now. I was thinking about this earlier today. I think their happiest moment, maybe since Roy Moore lost that Senate bid in Alabama, was when the stock market fell by 400 points yesterday. They were probably hoping that it would take another nosedive today and that would be a permanent downturn. If America were a stock, they'd be shorting it. The Democrats went from hope and change to nope and strange. The Democrats are now officially post-American. They become the grievance industrial complex, maybe a hodgepodge of leftist rage and hate with one goal in mind: to keep their voters angry and resentful. So when Trump issues a call like this, they become unhinged.
We can lift our citizens from welfare to work, from dependence to independence, and from poverty to prosperity.
Democrats don't want to hear that, and they certainly don't want you hearing it. All things considered, and it's hard to say this, but I really actually believe this, they want us weak and poor. Because when you're weak, you need them, and they think they can sell you on big government, and in turn, they have more power over your life. Now, let's face it. The Democrats' politics of bitterness, I think it's pretty much out of gas. And their post-State of the Union temper tantrums show us that Democrats have become the worst stereotype that they tried really hard to foist on President Trump. They're angry, unserious, and hateful. And that's the angle. Joining us for reaction in New York is Juan Williams. You see him weeknights here on FNC as co-host of The Five. And also in New York is John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the UN and a Fox News contributor. Juan, have at it.
Well, I was listening because I think that this was an opportunity for the president to reach out, to reach across the political aisle and bring us together. And I just don't see it. In fact, to me, this was an opportunity for a real debate about real policies. I don't think the president introduced any real policies last night. Instead, the people that you accuse of grievance and resentment, I think, are well represented by people who said, oh, we like this Trump speech because Trump says things like Americans dream too. Yeah, guess what? David Duke and the KKK love that. How about a kid, collecting flags for a funeral, a cemetery? Oh, but guess what? That means that people shouldn't be able to protest if they feel there's police brutality, says Trump. They're not respecting the flag. Yeah. Come on, well, you see this as clear. You're so smart.
When I think of the left always lurching to David Duke, that's like so 4 decades ago.
I'm sorry, this is what he said yesterday. That's
David,
not 4 years ago.
I'm talking about him. He's irrelevant. No one cares about David Duke. Except this is again, you're making my point.
Okay.
Trump talked about family leave. He talked about the opioid addiction. He talked about protecting all Americans. He talked about the American dream being accessible with hard work, faith, family, and a belief in oneself. How does any of that seem divisive? Because he used the word American and America as many times as he did. I think, Juan, not you. I'm not talking about you. But I think there are a lot of Democrats who they reflexively recoil when he says something like, Americans have dreams too. That's what most people feel. Their dreams have been neglected by politicians in both parties for years, while illegal immigrants and other identity politics groups are catered to. And what he said last night is, we're all Americans. Doesn't matter
I don't
where
know
you
how
came
you get
from.
an argument about that, Laura. I think everybody feels that way. We're all proud Americans. The thing is, if you start to talk about the dreamers in that way and say, oh, Americans are dreamers.
It's our country. That's what he's talking about. It's our country.
He's separating us out and saying, oh, we have dreams, they have dreams, instead of dealing with real immigration reform and a real policy.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Okay, John, because that's what he didn't do.
Well, but Juan, actually what he has done is he's more than doubled his initial offer of 800,000 illegal immigrants to get amnesty, and now it's 1.8 million. Well, it's called compromise. He's not getting everything he wants, and Democrats aren't going to get everything they want.
In addition to the building the wall, $25 billion.
We'll get to that. The Democrats have offered no serious compromise at all. John, let's get to you on this. My point is the Democrats have left behind the idea of governing and governance. and they are in full resistance mode. And I think it's really telling when Clyburn said he reacted so negatively to the American Dreams line.
Yeah.
I can tell you, my listeners today on the radio, and they're not fans of David Duke, thank you very much, they love that because they think they've been neglected, and someone is finally speaking for them. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the poll that you cited showed that Americans understand Trump was trying to reach out. And I think the Democrats' reaction was really the proof that the Henry Wallace wing of the Democratic Party has now finally and conclusively triumphed over the Harry Truman wing of the Democratic Party. That they have pushed themselves so far to the left that it's hard to see how they're going to come back. There is no Harry Truman wing in the Democratic Party anymore. There's no Scoop Jackson wing. There's no Joe Lieberman wing. It's really very similar to what's happened in Britain with Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. And this is a prescription for them to take themselves into political irrelevance because working class Democrats, the people who voted for Ronald Reagan, many of the same people and their children who voted for Donald Trump in the industrial Midwest, are appalled by this kind of behavior. And the Democrats are bringing it on themselves. I think it was so revealing. You couldn't have scripted it better.
Juan.
Well, you know, by the way, I think that the ambassador's right about the parties going to the extreme, so that I think he's right. The Democrats are being driven to the farther left because of the antipathy towards President Trump. But also, remember, Republicans had a strong antipathy towards President Obama and were driven to the right. But when I look at this, and, you know, going back to what you were discussing at the top here, Laura, I look at President Trump coming out last night and saying, I've got the biggest tax cut for you ever, and we both know that's not true. I look at what happened with the Black Caucus. You referenced Jim Clyburn sitting on their hands when he talks about lowest
black unemployment.
Yes. And I think to myself, oh, I understand why Laura and Ambassador Bolton have that reaction, but I'm going to tell you my reaction, which is, wait a second. Unemployment for blacks and Hispanics has been going down since 2010. This guy comes in office for a year, and he wants to take all the credit as if somehow it was his policies that turned things around.
Yeah, but
that's a lie.
As if politicians who are in office for any period of time don't take credit for what's happened in the year previous. And
well,
I can say this.
If you want an honest debate, Laura, let's have an honest debate and not just grab all the credit for ourselves.
But Juan, when you see the public's reaction, in just a moment I'll play some callers to my radio show today. You see the public's reaction. You have to admit that the Democrats, they're out of step. And I think they're out of line. I really do. Substantive debate is great. And I think the Republicans, after when Obama came in, the Tea Party came to power in a way because they were debating Obamacare and the stimulus and the son of stimulus. It was a substantive debate on those issues, and then they had big wins in 2010 midterms. Right. It was substantive. There was personal invective. There was some of that, but there was substantive. They didn't walk out on Obama. Joe Wilson yelled something. They didn't walk out. You know, you had Gutierrez yelling or making faces, and Joe Manchin kind of turned around at one point and looked at the Democrats, saying, "You guys aren't going to stand for this."
Well, you mentioned Joe Wilson. You just said it. Okay.
Yeah, one person. That's all I'm saying. It's not dozen people not showing up. Let's play this montage from my radio show today. Let's watch. Listen.
The Democrats actually seem the ones that are racist. You see where they say black unemployment, Latino unemployment went up. They're not happy about that.
I'm a very small business owner in West Virginia, and I was floundering at best under the Obama administration. I am thriving now.
I'm a Latino from Texas, and I just wanted to say that I'm proud to have a president that loves America finally.
It's great to have a president that's proud of this country, that wants to put Americans like me first.
John.
Look, I think Americans are very patriotic and with good reason, and it just completely confuses me why the Democrats get upset about it. But, you know, this is foreshadowed long ago. This is not an anti-Trump reaction on their part. Barack Obama was asked on his first overseas trip, do you believe in American exceptionalism? And he said the following: yes, I believe in American exceptionalism just like the Brits believe in British exceptionalism and the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism. So while he says in the first third of the sentence, yeah, I believe it, so these right-wingers can't accuse me, I don't, in the second third, he took it all away. How about Burkina Faso exceptionalism, Ecuadorian exceptionalism? The Democrats have a fundamental problem with the uniqueness of America. They didn't used to. Harry Truman didn't have any problem with it. He was a patriot. So the Democrats take this course. It's not a cultural war. This is something really that I think troubles Americans when they see that kind of reaction.
Juan, last word.
Well, no, I just think that when the president says that Americans believe in exceptionalism, I'm all for it. I also think that he was right, John, that other countries think that they're very special as well. But when I hear President Trump say things like, oh, you know, not only did I give you a great tax cut, but we've had such amazing growth, and he doesn't say, oh, yeah, China has more growth. Canada has more growth.
Whose fault is that?
India has more growth.
Dumb trade policy.
No, remember he said his
that.
policies were going to turn us around. I just think, John, at some point you got to wonder, is this just nationalistic rhetoric in order to gin up the base and not engage in what Laura asked for? Honest discussion of policies to move the country forward.
Well, China's just announced today they're moving a major solar company to the United States because of the tariffs that Trump just put in place. So
just remember this phrase, Juan.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Blue-collar Democrats. Blue-collar Democrats.
And by the way, implied its release was potentially imminent.
Our national security lawyers in the White House that work for me, work for the president, they're slicing and dicing it, looking at it so that we know what it means and what it understands.
Did you see it?
I did.
What do you think?
It'll be released here pretty quick, I think, and the whole world can see it.
Now, Fox sources are telling us it could be released tomorrow, and Adam Schiff just tweeted out that it's his understanding that the memo that was sent to the White House for review was changed somehow by Devin Nunes. We haven't confirmed that. And so he's complaining that the whole committee did not approve that. That just was tweeted a few moments ago. But the FBI is fighting back against the release, as we said earlier, issuing a statement today claiming the omissions of some facts impact the memo's accuracy. You need the full context, they say. Let's discuss all this with former Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz in Miami Beach, author of the bestseller Trumped Up: How Criminalization of Political Differences Endangers Democracy, and in Atlanta, Chris Swecker. He's a former head of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division in Washington and someone who personally knows Director Christopher Wray and Special Counsel Bob Mueller. All right, Professor, let's start with you here. There seems to be these dueling leaks coming out today. Some leaks of information about Peter Strzok and the timing of his knowledge of the emails that were found, the additional emails in the fall of 2016. But for the moment, let's focus on the release of this memo. Given what we know now, do you believe this memo should be released, should see the light of day?
Absolutely, and also the context should be released. So both sides have their say. Let the public decide. Let's see the memo. If people in the FBI think it's out of context, let them release the rest of the material in context and let the public decide. And as far as, the Strzok issue is concerned, it just shows what happens when the FBI doesn't have a clear rule that says no discussing ongoing criminal prosecutions except to say indictment, no indictment, especially during an election. If, in fact, Strzok tried to delay it, it probably backfired, because if it had been released earlier, then maybe they would have been able to decide there were no more classified materials, and they would have corrected it earlier. So whatever impacted on the election, this should never, ever happen, and we have to have rules preventing it from ever happening again.
Chris, you know Mueller, you know Wray. Christopher Wray under some fire, although he was, hugely praised by both sides at his own confirmation as head of the FBI. And your sense of where this is going tonight?
Well, as John Q. Citizen, I would love to see the memo. I would love to know if the FISA court was misled. I'd love to know if the FISA judge was aware that if the dossier information was included, that it was paid for by a political opponent. But the FBI executive in me, or former executive in me, says, let's play by the rules, not like this. This is not how you release information from a partisan body like Congress. I just don't have any faith in congressional committees. I'm sorry. They've got their own agenda, and there's a process for releasing FISA information. I've used it. It's not that hard to use. There's a right way to do this, and I just like to see it done by the rules. You get in trouble when you start making up your own rules.
Well, what happens when the FBI makes up its own rules?
But I have to tell you.
What happens? Who's supposed to do oversight of the FBI?
I have to tell you.
Chris, Congress does the oversight of the FBI, and while they're amazing people at the FBI,
Right.
if there was a political animus, as Professor Dershowitz has talked about on this show so often, undergirding the start of this investigation and the FISA application itself, we got a real problem on our hands with politicizing law enforcement in the United States. And I'm a huge defender of law enforcement. So you got a balancing act. Yeah, follow the rules. What if the FBI wasn't following the rules and they were off half-cocked? Professor.
Well,
Professor,
you
go
know,
ahead.
it's so refreshing to hear conservatives and Republicans questioning and overseeing the FBI. That's something that we liberals did for years and years and years. Now the Democrats are saying, oh, the FBI is beyond reproach. We should never question law enforcement. And the conservatives are saying, well, we need transparency. We need accountability. Look, everybody should be in favor of accountability by the FBI. And in my experience, at least 99% of the time, when people claim national security need for censorship, when it ultimately gets released, it was not really so important. It was overstated. Look, the movie The Post, obviously the Pentagon Papers makes that point. The government got up in front of the Supreme Court and said the country would fall if the Pentagon Papers were released. And they were released, and of course only positive came from it. So in general, I'm in favor of disclosure and full transparency. And sure, you follow the rules, but the rules ought to err on the side of disclosure rather than suppression.
And just for clarity purposes, Adam Schiff's tweet that just was sent out discovered late tonight that Chairman Nunes made material changes to the memo he sent to the White House, changes not approved by the committee. White House, therefore, reviewing a document the committee has not approved for release. And he attaches a copy of that document. So that's Chris. You can close it out, but you know you shouldn't. If that happened, and I don't know if it did or not. Well, you can't materially change a document that the committee hasn't approved. I would assume that that's a no-no. But we'll have to learn more about that. Chris, you know Mueller, you know Wray.
Right.
You also know the facts as they've developed about the agents and the Peter Strzok doing both investigations, Hillary email, and Trump. You have confidence in the outcome of this investigation?
I do have confidence in the outcome. I know Chris Wray. I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt in this under these circumstances. Look, I'm all for disclosure. The FBI is not a bunch of snowflakes. They can take criticism. They can take oversight. They should be transparent. But in this case, Chris has come forward. Now, he was approved with the overwhelming vote of the Senate. Let's give him the confidence. Let's give him the credibility, and let's go with his recommendation at this point. And let's do it right. If there's misconduct there, let's refer that to the Inspector General,
They are. You
which
keep
is
saying
basically
let's do it
internal
right.
affairs.
They are doing it right. I mean, you act as if. I mean, again, I'm putting aside this tweet by Schiff. They have done it right. Correct me if I'm wrong, Professor. They went through the process of the committee reviewing this document, reviewing its contents for national security concerns. The Chief of Staff, the President, other FBI officials, read it over. Wray and now FBI officials say, no, this is a grave issue of grave concern. That seems like, to me, it seems like a stretch. But I don't know. You keep saying do it by the rules. I think they have followed the rules. Again, setting aside this tweet that we can't confirm.
Just
Professor,
remember that constitutionally, the president has the authority to. The president has the authority to declassify anything. He is the ultimate authority on what can be declassified. And if he wants to see the memo out, nobody can really overrule that decision.
All right. And, guys, thanks so much. And this brought tears to my eyes last night when President Trump offered prayers for our next guests. In just a moment, we're going to talk to the parents of a girl murdered by members of that savage. An incredibly moving moment last night at the State of the Union. President Trump consoling the parents of two teenage girls. Now, police say that Nisa Mickens and Kayla Cuevas were chased down and brutally murdered by MS-13 gang members in Long Island in New York in 2016. 3 of the 4 people charged with the murders are illegal immigrants. President Trump honored Nissa and Kayla last night by inviting their parents to the speech. We reached out to Nissa's parents, Elizabeth Alvarado and Robert Mickens, and both are kind enough to join us and share their thoughts on the evening and the reaction to that moment. To both of you, I thought a lot about you both today in the aftermath of the speech and the reaction. And I want to say, for my listening audience on radio, and I know all the viewers on Fox, no words can express how incredibly devastated I know you must be. And we just thank you so much for being brave enough to come on the show and talk to us. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I want to first just ask you what it was like to be invited to the State of the Union speech. So many politicians haven't really confronted what MS-13 has done to American communities. Suffolk County and Long Island, especially hard hit in 2016 and 2017 by MS-13. What was it like to be invited?
It was definitely an honor, and we were still shocked about receiving an invite. And, this is something that we would, if we was asked to do it again, we would definitely do it.
Yeah, we would.
And Elizabeth?
It was overwhelming.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It was very overwhelming. And I appreciated that, that he let us come there to see him. It was an honor to see him.
And you met with him before the State of the Union speech briefly. And what was that like?
I'm sorry. It was good.
Me.
It was good. When we walked into his office, it was just like breathtaking. And I had Nissa's pen on me. So I asked him if he would if he could take it, for a gift. And he took it, and he took pictures with it, and he took pictures with me with it. And he's very genuine, very nice president. I really am happy that I met him.
I want to ask you both what it felt like to find out that so many people in the room, they're mostly Democrats, did not stand up when you were recognized and when your daughter was recognized last night.
Well, I felt it was very disrespectful. For the simple fact, the Democrats who was there who did not stand up, they were African Americans. So that hurts me a lot, to show that they did not have the respect or to honor what just happened to our lives and to America's lives. And it's not right. Regardless of how they feel about the president, they should show the respect, because I would show them the respect if that was their loved one.
There was a woman on another cable channel earlier today, and I tried to put myself in your shoes, hearing some of the comments that were made after this amazing moment, where so many of us were literally crying with you. And her name is Joy Reid, and she said this.
He gives a speech tonight in which he makes it sound like the biggest issue in the United States, the biggest threat is MS-13, a gang nobody that doesn't watch Fox News has ever heard of. So he makes it sound like they're the biggest threat.
Elizabeth, like MS-13 is any big deal.
I have no words. I mean, these are gang members that just, decided to be a judge and a jury to take my daughter out like that. It's unacceptable. I don't want it to happen to anybody else's family. But something needs to be done. And I won't stop doing what I'm doing until everything turns out right. I can only hope and pray that whoever's listening or any gang members, please stop the violence. It's enough. How much more blood do we have to shed?
Well, before we start enforcing our borders, they should never be in this country in the first place. If they weren't in this country in the first place, your daughter would still be alive today. That's what makes my blood boil. They should never have been here. Robert and Elizabeth, thank you. I know we're going to check back with you, and we wish you both, all the best. And I know it's a still searing pain for both of you. Thank you so much for spending some apology, for botching the sexual harassment complaint in her 2008 presidential campaign after a female campaign staffer repeatedly accused her faith advisor of harassing her, and he wasn't fired. Joining us now to discuss that apology drop and other matters is former advisor to President Bill Clinton, Dick Morris, who's the author of the new book, Rogue Spooks, The Intelligence War on Donald Trump. Dick, Hillary Clinton up to her old tricks, document dump on Fridays. We're used to document dump on right before the State of the Union speech. What do we make from this? What do we take away from it?
Well, Laura, Hillary's entire public persona is based on this issue is based on two original lies. Sometimes people have original sin. She has the original lies. One is that she says Bill didn't do all the stuff he's accused of doing, even though much of it is proven. And secondly, she never believed it, that he did. And the point of those lies is that she cannot admit that Bill does this stuff or that she knows about it and lets him get away with it. Because her entire political power is derivative. First ladies aren't elected. It's all derivative of being married to Clinton. And if the marriage is seen to be a sham and a fraud, she is. And therefore she will do anything, put up with any hypocrisy, any lie, any contortion to avoid admitting the truth.
Well, and this other story also kind of bubbled up today in the Guardian newspaper. And it was all the old home week in Clinton's scandal-orama, Dick, because Cody Shearer, oh my gosh, that name is like Webb Hubble, Cody Shearer, the Mina airstrip, like all this stuff comes back. Cody Shearer supposedly wrote a second dossier, which kind of confirmed the first dossier, and that kind of blew up. But our reporting indicates that there's no there. And so we're discounting what the Guardian reported today. However, give us a little background on this Cody Shearer and why anything he put together about Donald Trump could probably be dismissed summarily.
Well, Cody is one of the card-carrying original members of the Black Ops team that Hillary developed over the years to chase down and blackmail the women with whom Bill was involved to cow them into silence. Kathleen Willey very explicitly mentions him as part of that. And I believe that this was probably not the second dossier. I think this may have been the first dossier. I think that it's entirely possible that Hillary and her campaign people got Shearer to come up with these fantastic stories, which all major ones of which have been totally disproven. But they couldn't release them under Cody Shearer's name because he had no credibility. At one point, he was accused of negotiating a diplomatic solution in Bosnia, and it had to be repudiated by the U.S. government. And the press knows all about Shearer. You know all about him.
No. It's Black Ops.
So they needed to find someone with Black Ops. They needed to find someone with credibility to be the front man for that. And they may have chosen Christopher Steele because of his background in MI6. And it's also possible that the Brits played a role in this. Working through Christopher Steele. We wrote this book, Rogue Spooks, and predicted all of this, and about saying that there was basically a conspiracy against Donald Trump based in the FBI, and that
deep state,
deep
state's digging big holes. Dick, we're going to have you on radio tomorrow. To talk more about this. So this is a fascinating development, and we're going to stay on this, of course. And by the way, Democrats are not only resisting the president, they're now resisting that things that actually define all Americans.
Proudly stand for the national anthem. The motto is "In God We Trust." We enacted the biggest tax cuts and reforms in American history. African American unemployment stands at the lowest rate ever recorded, giving our veterans choice in their health care decisions.
Let's bring in Republican pollster, public opinion guru, Frank Luntz. He joins us from West Virginia. All right, Frank, the trigger words. I'm sorry, I was screaming laughing when things like "In God We Trust," and then they pan the crowd at the State of the Union. The Democrats are all sitting on their hands. What triggered them the most, and what drove them right over the edge?
Well, they didn't want to hear any success. So every time that Donald Trump pointed to a specific statistic, a fact about how things had changed in the last 12 months, you saw no reaction from the Democrats. Second is that any time that he suggested that he was going to reach across the aisle and find some sort of bipartisanship, they wanted no part of it. And third, it goes back to the promises that he made and the fact that he is attempting to keep them. I think it's a tragedy, quite frankly, that the Democrats don't realize that with Donald Trump's success, America succeeds. Laura, a lot of people criticize the Republicans under the Obama administration that they wanted him to fail. And yet now it looks like, and I think this is a tragedy for the country, that too many congressional Democrats want Trump to fail so they can take over the White House. But what does that do to the country? That's a real problem.
What was amazing is on the immigration issue, you had Trump going from 800,000 getting amnesty, Frank, to 1.8 million getting amnesty. And he said, look, people aren't going to get everything they want. That's compromise. I'm willing to compromise. Let's get this done together. It's like crickets, tumbleweeds were blowing through the Democrat section.
Well, this is something that the Republicans have to realize, that even, and I'm in West Virginia right now, and the gentlemen standing behind me, they're the reason why Donald Trump maintains his popularity and why he did so well last night. They feel listened to. They feel heard. And a lot of Americans felt left out until Election Day 2016. On immigration, the public has to understand that it doesn't look like the Democrats themselves are ready to compromise. And if you don't get this legislation that provides border security as well as a solution.
It's great to have Frank Luntz on and Dick Morris, by the way. But on this busy news night, Shannon Bream and the Fox News at Night team are all set to take it all from here. Cannot wait to watch. Shannon, take it away.
Laura, thank you so much. Here is a preview of what we've got coming up tonight. New developments tonight on the timing of the release of the classified memo on alleged government surveillance abuses that has the GOP and FBI at loggerheads.
It'll be released here pretty quick, I think.
It comes after dire warnings by the FBI. Former DOJ official Tom Dupree weighs in on why it may be the FBI has such strong objections to the memo's release. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton says there are new documents that show the Obama State Department may have been working to undermine President Trump. We'll examine those claims. And partisan politics continue tonight after President Trump's call for unity. Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters' State of the Union rebuttal. Prominent California Republican Harmeet Dillon is here to respond. Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. Brand new tonight, serious accusations by the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee as it becomes increasingly clear that memo is going to be released and soon. But not all Republicans claim it's going to be a bombshell report showing that anti-Trump bias within the highest law enforcement bodies in the land actually happened. Democrats claim it is partisan propaganda meant to detract from the real story, alleged Russian collusion during the 2016 presidential campaign. Here's what we know tonight. 5 top FBI officials went to Chief of Staff John Kelly hoping to persuade him to stop the memo's release. After he tried to allay their concerns, the FBI officials went to the Bureau, went ahead and released a damning statement. And just minutes ago, the top Democrat on the House Intel Committee made a serious new allegation that the Republicans on the committee altered the memo the committee had voted on Monday before sending then a different version to the White House for review. But there's some confusion tonight about whether the White House actually had input into that second version, whether we're now talking about 2 or 3 versions of the controversial memo. Doug McKelway is working, trying to get us some answers tonight. Hey, Doug.
A lot of details here, Shannon, but late tonight, here's the gist of this. The ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, accused the chairman, Devin Nunes, of, in a letter, of sending that 4-page memo to the White House that is not the same document that members of the House have been reviewing, he says. He says it's been altered. He says it's deeply troubling, and he wants the document withdrawn. Now, we know the White House made some changes to the memo to appease the FBI. No word on whether Schiff may have mistaken the White House changes for what he believes to be changes made by the committee. There's a very good chance, though, that this 4-page memo will be in the hands of the public as early as tomorrow morning. There appears to be no White House resistance to its release. Here's Chief of Staff John Kelly on Fox News Radio today.
It'll be released here pretty quick, I think, and the whole world can see it.
The president was caught on a hot mic exiting the State of the Union speech last night as Congressman Jeff Duncan implored him to release the memo. Here's the brief exchange there.
Let's release the memo. Oh, yeah. Don't worry. 100%.
So with the clock ticking down now, the FBI is pleading to keep the memo under wraps, the famously publicity-averse bureau taking the rare step of issuing a public memo, which read in part, as expressed during our initial review, we have grave concerns about material omissions of fact that fundamentally impact the memo's accuracy. That statement coming after FBI Director Wray and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein visited the White House earlier this week, also urging the memo stay under lock and key. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes is having none of that, infuriated over what he sees as months of FBI stonewalling over the release of key documents. Today, he slammed the Bureau, quote, "It's no surprise to see the FBI and DOJ issue spurious objections to allowing the American people to see information related to surveillance abuses at these agencies. The FBI is intimately familiar with material omissions with respect to their presentations to both Congress and the courts." And he added, "Once the truth gets out, we can begin taking steps to ensure our intelligence agencies and courts are never misused like this again." We are also learning just how contentious the House Intelligence Committee meeting was on Monday, at which the straight party line vote was taken to release this memo. Democrats objected strenuously, noting the memo was full of cherry-picked info. Ranking Member Schiff lambasting the release of, quote, "their flawed and misleading classified talking points," even though almost no committee members or staff had read the underlying material. Well, a minority report is in the works and is expected to be released several days after the majority report. Things are getting fast and furious in this 11th hour here, Shannon.
Yeah, and a little bit confusing, too. So, Doug, thank you for parsing that out for us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And reminding our viewers, we've not seen the memo. We only know what's been alleged. We are told that the memo may involve a former Trump advisor named Carter Page, who believes the so-called Steele dossier, filled with salacious and unverified accusations against the president, partly funded by Democrats, was used as the basis for a surveillance warrant to spy on members of the Trump campaign. Lots to talk about here, so let's bring in Tom Dupree, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President George W. Bush, for analysis. Great to see you tonight, Tom.
Good to see you, Shannon.
Okay, so let's talk through this. Apparently, the committee voted on Monday to release the memo. The Republicans did. It went over to the White House, and this is where some of the confusion comes in, because we're told, according to the reporting of our own John Roberts, who's our chief White House correspondent, he says there was a new version of the memo at some point that was a product of review by the White House that was then presented to folks within the DOJ or FBI to allay their concerns. Still, the FBI after that had this to say. The FBI was provided a limited opportunity to review this memo the day before the committee voted to release it. As expressed during our initial review, we have grave concerns about material omissions of fact that fundamentally impact the memo's accuracy. Now, it sounds like there may be a new version of the memo since then. Whether it's a White House product or something from the majority on the committee, we don't know. But it was enough for the FBI today to say, we don't think this thing should be released, or at least that the omissions of fact make it maybe not an accurate narrative. Your take?
Shannon, my take on this is that you need to take what the FBI is saying seriously. That's not to say that this memo can't ever be released or that it couldn't be released in modified form. But I would say this, that the president appointed Chris Wray to be the director of the FBI because he trusts his judgment. And when the FBI says it has grave concerns about something like this, again, you don't absolutely have to follow the FBI's recommendation in every case, but at a minimum, I think you need to take it seriously. We've seen that there's been some back and forth between the White House and the FBI. The FBI apparently still isn't satisfied. I'm hopeful that in the next 24 hours before the memo gets released, there can be some sort of compromise or accommodation that at least enables some degree of transparency into what's in this memo, but at the same time in a way that assuages the concerns that have been raised by the FBI about protecting our intelligence sources.
Yeah, it certainly feels like there are a number of competing interests here, because you have a number of Republicans on the committee and otherwise saying, listen, these entities have not helped us as we've tried to get some information. They refuse to release things for us, and so we're a little bit wary of them. This is what Devin Nunes, the chair of the committee, had to say. He says, having stonewalled Congress's demands for information for nearly a year, it's no surprise to see the FBI and DOJ issue spurious objections to allowing the American people to see information related to surveillance abuses at these agencies. Later on in the statement, he says this: it's clear that top officials used unverified information in a court document to fuel a counterintelligence investigation during an American political campaign. I mean, he basically sounds like he's telling us there, Tom, what's at the heart of this memo without actually releasing it, at least the allegations.
I think that's a very fair characterization. I think from the congressman's perspective,
family